Alright, so hello YouTubes, back at you with another video. This is actually attempt 4 on this video because I am thrillingly incompetent at something as simple as screen resolution. So this is more or less going to be the SparkNotes version of my impression of Marizo. My first impression is probably going to be significantly longer, and just so everyone's aware, the short version of me talking is still quite long. So expect this video to still be a mouthful. So, in general with Marizo, my impression of her is somewhat negative, which it seems like same as when Tekken 8 released. I'm sort of against the grain on this because a lot of people are receiving her positively because she's relatively balanced in terms of a DLC character. Now, I'm a lifelong fighting game enjoyer. I'm not a competitor, of course, because I'm too bad at these things. But the thing is, balance doesn't necessarily an interesting character make, you know? But just because a character isn't shaking up the meta, or they're not completely broken, like many Tekken DLCs in the past, doesn't necessarily mean that they're anything beyond the scope of what Tekken 8 as a game is, and what Tekken 8 characters are, you know? And I honestly feel like a lot of people are experiencing some kind of like recency bias, or something along those lines, when they're saying that Marizo is anything other than what we've come to expect from a Tekken 8 newcomer. So to start with, one of my main complaints about this character is her punishment profile is extremely solid. She has an 11 frame knockdown, a 12 frame knockdown that reaches from range 2.5. It's a pretty long range knockdown. It's a good whip punisher. That's all it is. A 13 frame wall splat heat engage, a 14 frame wall splat, and of course she can scoop you up with her down forward 2 at 15. And that's not even mentioning her long range whip punishment with forward 3+4 for moves with heavy pushback like Death Fist. And her 10 frame creates a looping situation that's sort of frustrating to deal with. But that's because she is another one of these very easy to pilot or easy to understand waifu characters with an advancing stance that threatens a mix-up. The broader low-end complaint on this character people talk about is the fact that she's rather linear, and that's fair. She is quite linear for a Tekken 8 character, but the issue is, with a little bit of human intuition and even just delaying the timings of your moves, you can cover up that gap fine. And what you're left with is an annoying character to deal with. A character that is Anna, but less volatile. Another waifu who just puts you in mix-up situations that demand your attention and cannot be responded to in a variety of ways. Because just in Merengue Moroso, her advancing crouch dash style stance, all of her options are meant to check another defensive options. She can track to one side with her one option, which leads into a heat engage, or alternatively leads into her stance. Her low option has relatively large range for a low of its kind, but it's launch punishable, or you could simply not do the last hit. And she has a safe mid to cover that low. She has an armor move to cover challenges on block. She has plus frames for opponents that reasonably decide that it's not worth the trouble to try and retaliate or to try and move. The stance is sort of made by committee. It's a checklist of things that a stance quote-unquote needs in order to function. Not to mention the fact that it can be very quickly cancelled out of, adding an extra layer to her mix-ups and making it more annoying to defend against, especially as she's advancing on you and realigning. This is just sort of typical Tekken 8 shit. And on the subject of stances, this stance is woefully underwhelming, is what I'll say. The fact that it's just two mids, a low and a high, and sure, she can cancel into Merengue Moroso or chain them together, fine, I guess. But there's really nothing here mechanically. I'm not seeing the same spark that other people are by playing this character or seeing this character be played. So that goes over the more broad issues I have with the character, just the philosophy of how she's designed, More particular things that I think are strange are the fact that all of her stance transitions, when cancelled, as in she does not enter into the stance, are -6. The big issue of her being -6 is the fact that, as a result, she can't really play Tekken. And Tekken is in fat air quotes, of course, after hitting the opponent. She cannot step, she cannot armor, she cannot sabaki, she cannot high crush. And it's sort of funny to me that the effect plays so early on that move. And the reason for this is pretty clear. Not only do they want you to do the rock, paper, scissors with the stance transition, but if you were still able to effectively push pressure onto your opponent while canceling, it's fundamentally against that design idea. Not only that, it'd be very powerful, because I'm not a stance character person, so I would much prefer to just be playing the game, you know, like a normal entity of the planet Earth, you know. And with that in mind, if I was still able to just play Tekken afterwards, that'd be obnoxiously powerful, because the mind game is no longer just, do I do one of the slower options and you float me, or do I check you with the high? It's now a whole dozens of other options. So, and the strange thing on this is that there is an exception, and I think that exception is very odd, because her 4-4 is 0 on hit, which means I can step, which means I can armor move, which means I can high crush, and I can just retaliate against my opponent's preemptive defense after 4-4. I don't know exactly why this is the only exception. I'd rather it be consistent, and 4-4 was made -6 on cancel as well, but it's more than likely because the animation is different. Because these are all knees, this is a weird upwards kick. I just think it's odd. I also think some of Marizo's frame data is a little funny. I don't understand exactly why down back 2 is both -11 on the first hit, and I would explain this as, you know, it's a stance transition. It can be gone. You can go into her pole dancer stance. But the second hit on the other mid is also -11, and it has no outstanding qualities other than being a hit confirmable mid. The second hit by itself does not counter hit. There's very little interesting about it. So, one of my other main things that I dislike about Marizo, or Marizu rather, is the fact that she can play at ranges other characters of her archetype cannot, because of all of these ogre-inspired moves. Stuff like down 2, even sidestep 2, up forward 3. All of these moves reach incredibly, oh yeah, down 3 of course. All of these moves reach incredibly far and allow her to threaten you at a range, a character who moves as quickly as she does and forces as many interactions as she does really shouldn't be able to, in my opinion. So, I got over the important stuff. Her punishment profile is too clean. It honestly feels sort of like a checklist of punishment moves that she needs. 10 frame, 11 frame, and going from 11 frame up, she can wall splat you or knock you down. That's incredibly powerful. That's not something that you should really underestimate on a character. And it's very rare for there to be an explicit answer to everything on a character's frame data. She goes from 10 to 15 in a straightforward way. I think the Moringi Moroso transition itself is a little funny. Every time I talk to people about it, people say that you can just jab interrupt her, you know, it's not a real mix-up, just sidestep, but they forget that she can quickly cancel out of it, so I don't know, it's still annoying to deal with. I think her combos are fun to do. They're relatively lengthy though, and she has a lot of wall carry because of the pushback on this ridiculous looking snake move. But that's something that sort of requires tweaking, because I don't think it's fully intentional, because if the last hit of these snakes hit, it pushes you back extremely far on more long-winded combos. So what else? Her heat only attacks, I think the lasers on this move are ridiculous, because she doesn't really do anything quite like it in any other move but her rage art and this. Um, Now, I know I was just complaining about the fact that her dumb ogre-inspired attacks are dumb, and I don't necessarily like them, but again, I feel like maybe we should have had more of them so they seem like a more cohesive part of her package instead of just this one-off mega laser that she gets as a follow-up. I also don't think the animal theme is well utilized very much, and I do think it's somewhat odd that as far as creatures in the wild are concerned, her ogre-inspired moves aren't reminiscent of them in any way. You'd expect them to be more animalistic instead of just moves that we've seen before, but with a different skin. I think that's the thrust of all my concerns on a gameplay level. I don't really have much else to say. She's just another typical character. I feel like she's being underestimated a little bit because people have been begging for a balanced character and are ignoring some of the Tekken 8 isms on her, but that's more whatever. I think story-wise, she's incredibly fucked up. Just like the introduction of Reina sort of shits on a lot of the previous games. Actually, every character they reveal in Tekken sort of mucks something up. I think Marizo is the most egregious one in a while, because her introduction makes the entire plot of Tekken 3 onwards not make any sense. So, you mean to tell me Heihachi Mishima, grandpappy, capitalist evil man of the century, he's on his grind set and shit. So, he destroys the Chang's tribe in order to summon Ogre, the green fella, because he wants his blood for his own uses and so on and so forth. And he uses Jin as a pawn in order to get both the devil, who he believes will be a nuisance in the future, and Ogre out of the way. Okay, sure. Fine. This is reasonable as a plotline. You can say it's contrived, you can say it's bullshit, you can say it's magic fairy dust nonsense, but it's the plot of Tekken 3 more or less. Why did he do that when there was a friendly ogre in Africa? And there's seemingly an ogre on every continent, if we're going by the lore statements on Twitter. How does that make any sense? Is Heihachi dumb? I mean, the answer is yes, because the series is dumb. But that really just shits on the entire premise of that game and the games going forward, because everything is downstream from the consequences of the third Tekken Iron Fist tournament, And it also makes Ancient Ogre's behavior extremely strange, because not only was he sealed, and not only was he considered a murderous god of martial arts, he just sort of traveled the world for the love of the game, just catching smoke here and there and packing and piling up bodies, allegedly, of course, for no reason. What the fuck was his mission? What was his goal, and why is he so measurably different from the other ogres? Or this other ogre, rather, since we haven't seen the rest of them. And that also calls into question certain characters' motivations, because Feng Wei wants to be the strongest martial artist in the world. If there is an ogre on every continent, why hasn't he tried to pursue the legend of some kind of mythical, maybe even magical warrior who can devour the fists of other martial artists? You think that would have been his first stop before going to the Tekken tournament? Or it'd be something that'd be in the back of his mind. But that's the nature of the retcon. It makes the world seem sort of nonsensical, Not to mention that the ogre that the Chang's tribe was keeping sealed, he was not in Asia, so he walked across the ocean or something to smoke up Jun and give Jin motivation for some reason. I don't know why he was there at all. That doesn't make any sense. The assumption is that it has to do with the devil gene, which has been tied into almost every conflict going forward, but it literally doesn't make sense. Honestly, I don't even know why you had to explicitly make her related to Ogre. And it's strange because it's a bit of a missed opportunity in a way, because there's a lot of things you could have done with Marizo that would have been easier to follow or made more sense. but we're just going with there's multiple ogres, I guess. Now, I'm guessing people don't. Yeah, obviously people don't take Tekken story too seriously, so it doesn't matter at the end of the day. But it's just one extra thing on the pile of issues with the character. I also think her personality is a little bit abrasive, for lack of a better word. It causes friction. She sounds annoying, she is annoying, and the things she says are annoying. I just don't like seeing her function and exist, you know? She's another typical cheery, happy-go-lucky girl in a game where we already have upbeat female characters and stuff. And it's not a matter of her simply being eccentric. I think her positivity doesn't fit within this universe. Like, she's Lucky Chloe without the interesting, like, other half of her personality. And that's just very odd, especially when this is supposed to be the triumphant return of the ogre, you know? This is the ogre everyone's been waiting on, and then she's talking about, like, friendship is power type shit. And it's just so strange to me. I think my stupid ideas for, like, any potential story fixes on this character are going to be saved for, like, a hypothetical future video or rant. But, yeah, this character doesn't make sense to me. Alright, so I think that's the spark notes. So I'm going to pack it up. If I think of anything else, I'll probably edit it in on either before or after this portion of the video. And the final complete conclusion is mechanically this character is built like there was a checklist involved with making her. She's got a 10 frame counter hit string, she has a 10 frame punish all the way to 15 usable viable punishment, not situational at all. She has good long range with punishment, back 1 and forward 3+4. The fact she has a common uppercut is bizarre considering all of these things she does have that other characters often don't. And I feel like the way that she's so scrappy and get in your face is contradicted by other design choices on her moveset with like every snake attack. Just probably should go to a different character is the honest truth of it, because it doesn't really follow in my mind the ranges she can threaten you at while also still just being sort of this marauder, this trickster type character who can go under, dodge around, and create pressure between tiny gaps.